Meine Damen und Herren, guten Abend.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter Braai. I'm Secretary General of Terre des Hommes. I'm a Dutch Swissman. That's why I've got this funny accent. And I would propose, out of courtesy to our panelists, that I think I'm actually going to choose to speak in English, if that's okay with all of you.
I don't know whether for you it's the same as for me. All these Davos, Porto Alegre discussions about the state of the world and where we're going. I find it all sometimes depressive, sometimes inspiring, always confusing. Today, we celebrate the 40 years anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. And it seems an extremely appropriate moment to look more closely at the situation of the weakest in our society, children and their mothers. Somebody asked me a week ago, but why a panel on children in Davos? I mean, this is about companies and rules, etc. But as Terre des Hommes, we are not grand theoreticians about globalization. We work in more than 30 countries. We do that for more than 40 years, day in, day out, hands in the mud for hundreds of thousands of children, concretely changing their reality. But what's the influence of globalization on them? Now, we put a background paper on our website on www.tdh.ch, and I saw that many people read it. It's a difficult issue. Children are touched by everything. So look at this panel in the context with all the other panels taking place at the public eye, here at the open forum, because all the subjects touch them. But as we shall see, children need specific attention. Now, the world is changing, and not only because of what happened at the 26th of December, the tsunami. We'll get back to that. But I'd like to quote you something from somebody who said yesterday, who said globalization touches a third of the population of this world, but two-thirds of the population of this world, living in the countryside on bidonville, they are waiting until they benefit as well. But they won't wait forever. They won't wait forever. The young people of this planet have a right to the future. But if we deny them that perspective, take care for their revolt, for their revolution. The fight for development is not a nice thing that would be nice if globalization, if they have time, would be nice if they could deal with it. But, said this person, it's the fight for the future of globalization itself. Now, this was not an NGO leader who said that yesterday. It was President Chirac of France. Now, if nice words would save the planet, Africa would be the richest continent on the world. And as the singer Bono said this morning, we assist at discussions between reasonable people about subjects which are not reasonable. Is child trafficking normal? Is child labor normal? Is a sense of urgency that all the NGOs feel normal? Children is not an emotional issue. Children in many of the countries where we work is more than 40% of the population. And if society breaks down, by nature, tsunami, children and their mothers are the first victims. That's also the case for man-made disaster in situations of war, and also the case in situations of economic disaster if globalization doesn't quite work out. Now, that's the thing we would like to look at tonight. It's complicated. We won't find the answers. And in order to go slightly further, this is the third time Terre des Hommes co-organized this panel. We would like to avoid a discussion along the lines, yes, there is a problem. We have noticed it. We are dealing with it. everything will go better. Now go back to bed and stop worrying. So we got to ourselves this quite extraordinary panel. There is no Bundesrat, there is no film star, but there are 4 individuals who try, with the things they do in their lives, make a difference, and we would like to hear from them. Let me start from left to the right. Don't think in this audience I would go from the right to the left. Mike Dottridge. Mike Dottridge comes from Britain to us. Mike spent working 70 years at the international headquarters of Amnesty, investigating violations of civil and political rights in various parts in sub-Saharan Africa. And it included, in 1979, some of you will remember, the situation in the Central African Empire when the Emperor Bokassa ordered to clamp down on school children, in which many were killed. In 1995, Mike moved to another London-based NGO, Anti-Slavery International, which was established in the 19th century. It's one of the oldest NGOs to campaign against slavery. Now, you would think slavery doesn't exist anymore, but as we will hear later, he continues doing that, campaigning together with Terre on different subjects, including child trafficking and also child labor. He was director of Anti-Slavery International in 2002, and since then became an independent human rights advisor. For the past 2 years, he's been consultant to Terre, and he published a study, Kids as Commodities, Child Trafficking and What to Do About It. Welcome, Mike. Thank you for joining us on this panel. Then we've got Mrs. Ellen Rangier, who is Swiss, who's got a legal background and who has worked for the last 12 years with different social and cultural organizations in Switzerland. She gives free legal advice to people on the edge of society, and she is a publisher in her own right of a magazine called Fritz und Franzi for parents with school-going children, to help these parents in handling increasingly different problems we also face in Switzerland with children going to school, racism, violence, etc. Now, and she raises the kind of question ordinary mothers in Switzerland raise. Thank you for being here with us, Ellen. Then Robin Cornelius. Robin is Swedish by birth and Swiss by life. Can I say it that way? He is the CEO of Switcher, which is a manufacturer and trading company for sport and leisure goods. Switcher is rather well known because it is committed to social and environmental principles. He has taken a firm stance against child labor. He actively promotes community building, supports several schools, takes care of the environment, and his sustainable business is commercially successful. We will learn more about it later. Robin, welcome. Thank you for being here. Last but not least, Kumi Naidoo. Kumi is from South Africa. Kumi was kicked out of school when he was 15 because of his activities for anti-apartheid. He, thanks to self-study and the rest, he became a Rhodes Scholar in Oxford University and got his doctorate, his PhD there. He is Secretary General for Civicus, the World Alliance for Citizen Participation. He's got one daughter of 15 years who is his biggest critic. And of course, he comes from the continent of Africa, where a silent tsunami hits every 7 weeks. Welcome to the panel. Thank you for being here. Now, this is a complicated discussion. It's the situation of children. Mike, this is Davos. I understand that in a perfect world, globalization would be a wonderful thing. And if I understand it well, the theory goes as follows. Globalization helps to set in motion a dynamic process that will lead to more development for all, thus increases the importance of human capital and increases the investment in education. It will result in a reduction of child labor in any form, and economic growth on a global scale will result in more jobs, improved livelihood, and an overall reduction in poverty. Sounds wonderful to me. What's the situation of children in 2005, Mike?
Well, it does sound marvellous. Let's look a little bit at reality and then at what's being done to address it. Well, let me start by saying why I'm here. I'm here because best part of 10 years ago, I met some young people The first one had just retired from her job. She was 11. She'd worked for 3 or 4 years, full-time, as a house servant. It's easy, isn't it, working around the house? She was a robot. She took months and months and months to be deprogrammed. She was still alive, but actually at the time I met her, only just. She was in West Africa. Nothing to do with globalization in theory. She was working in a private home. A child I met soon after her, about the same age, a boy in India, had been working, I suppose, in the globalized sector. He'd been making hand-knotted carpets. You may remember there was a big campaign for many years about slave children in India and neighboring countries making carpets. There are still slave children making carpets today. Those were two faces that pushed me to do something, or to try and do something, about the scale of unacceptable exploitation going on in the world today. The figures are too large to manage, which is why I start with the individual faces. When we talk about child labour, we know there are many more than 200 million children involved. 180 million are in either dangerous jobs or near slavery. 180 million. Think how many that is compared to the population of Europe. And of those, yes, 8 million, more than 8 million, are not just in dangerous jobs, but in some sort of slavery, forced labour, prostitution. 8 million, that's about the same as the city I live near in England, the city of London. And among them, then, well over 1 million have been trafficked. Both the boy and the girl I mentioned to you had been trafficked, not from one country to another, but from one part of their own country to another. So they were isolated from their families. They were not free themselves, but their employers were free to do what on earth they liked with those children. So that's the problem. It's absolutely massive. So what are the solutions? I'm not going to talk about all the different solutions, but I will talk about two holy grails, two things that a lot of companies, a lot of people concerned about children are looking for, and we haven't actually found yet. The first is the question about what to do with working children. We've seen a lot of developments in the last decade. Companies have adopted, first of all, under pressure of publicity, codes of conduct saying they wouldn't exploit children, they wouldn't employ children under 15. One of the first big campaigns on that concerning children in clothing factories in Bangladesh resulted in terrible disaster, with kids being sacked, given no remuneration, ending up much worse off than they were in the factories. So what to do with children when they're working, as they are, more than 200 million of them, in situations that international standards don't allow. That's a holy grail that we're still looking for the right solution to. There are lots of solutions, but none of them seems ideal. There's a bigger holy grail, and it's the one I think very relevant to our discussion today. How should we monitor what companies are doing? At the beginning of the 1990s, it was really just down to shareholders. Today, there's a huge industry of what we call corporate social responsibility, more codes than I can keep up with, even international ones, and thank goodness, more companies that have signed on to those and agreed to respect them and not to employ children. But when I look at the benefits to children, both those who are working, about those who might be recruited to work, I don't see much in the way of benefits. I see a huge industry that has certainly kept the noses, the reputation of well-known brand names clean. But I see the efforts being pushed down always to local level, where people are starving, where children go out to work because they have no choice if they or others in their family are not going to starve. So this second Holy Grail is how to not just set the standards, but how to monitor the companies in a meaningful way. And we know there have been lots of expensive attempts, but I don't think we've yet found the right solution. So I think it's fair to say a lot of children are in trouble. When I said 180 million, that's almost 1 in 10 children alive today that is in a terrible form of exploitation.
Kumi, Mike is certainly exaggerating. I mean, child labor, child trafficking have been around for centuries. Nothing new on that. That's nothing to do with globalization.
Globalization has exacerbated many of the problems that Mike actually describes. For example, ease of travel, the communication between trafficking networks is facilitated by the internet, for example. That all accelerates the current trend. And if we look specifically at Africa, HIV/AIDS pandemic itself, in terms of how it has moved as fast as it moved across national borders, is partly a reality of globalization. And if we look at how in Africa, for example, HIV/AIDS affects young people, it's devastating. We have today, in many households across the African continent, what we call either children or teenage-headed households, because both the parents have died, and usually it's the grandparents that are looking after them, and when the grandparents go, the 14-year-old finds herself or himself in a parenting role. Now, again, the connection to the injustice of globalization and the HIV/AIDS pandemic is worth understanding, because part of globalization is also a particular set of trade and economic rules. And the pharmaceutical industry in the world has fought very, very hard to prevent generic, cheap versions of life-saving HIV/AIDS drugs to be available on the scale that would save millions of lives. So in that sense, I think globalization really exacerbates it. And if I can just make this point about how much of hypocrisy there is in the world and how much of hot air gets spoken at the World Economic Forum and many other conferences around the world. When we think, just to give you a sense of scale, of how we value the life of people who live in rich countries and the life of children who live in rich countries, and how we value the life of children who live in poor countries, it's very stark. And let me give you an example. When the awful tragedy happened on 9/11, when the planes crashed into the World Trade Center and so on, 4,000, just less than 4,000 people lost their lives. The whole world stood in solidarity with the people of the United States. Every day on the African continent, 4,000 people lose their lives as a result of the HIV/AIDS pandemic. But the whole world sits by and makes nice comments, and those that have power are not prepared to actually take action to actually address it. In my own country, 600 human beings, sometimes children, are losing their lives on a daily basis. 600. So just try to think about it. 600 people. Cemeteries in the urban centers are maxed out. We are running out of place to bury our dead. I mean, that's the scale of the problem. So where globalization on the positive side, if I can just conclude with this, comes in, is that we have an opportunity now that this information doesn't have to be locked. I mean, Mike, if you reflect on your early days in the anti-slavery organization in terms of what how we could use the internet to get the word out and so on, that has changed. So I think one of the positive things about globalization, it is very hard these days to totally hide some of the worst injustices that exist in the world. So in that sense, I think there is also a positive spin to it.
So it's a real emergency you're talking about. To the Roman, to the responsibilities of companies. Child labor exists in many countries. You produce in countries like India. What is your experience, the way you can function as an economic organization?
If I may, Peter, just before one thing, Kumi talked about children in rich and poor countries. 4,000 kids dies from rich tourist countries. Everybody will talk about it. If it's from poor countries, nobody will notice it. It's true. But I will point out that Switzerland, if I do not say a mistake, has one of the highest suicide rates in the world. And it comes from young people. So they are in despair. It's not a question of materialistic level. The problem is much deeper, is values. And I'm coming to your point, Peter, but when you think about values, Gandhi used to say the worst violence is to maintain a population in ignorance. If you see a 20-year-old lady or young child not able to read or nor to write, how can they have a chance in life? So education is the first point. And secondly, nowadays, maybe with the shifting of the 21st century, we have a shifting to a more feminine vision. Technically, we call anima, said a guy called Jung, maybe people know. I'm very optimistic because the values will come back after the materialistic start from 1960s. Now we go back to more simple Vernünftigkeit. We come back to values. So now to answer your question, Pete, about why we can take care of kids in India. It's how you say, we say in French, I cannot translate l'occasion fait le larron. I went to India in 1983, met my partner. I was 28, just graduated from university, and I was spending weeks and weeks. I'm still spending weeks and weeks. After 20 years, flying down, sitting down with my partner, how are you doing? Acha, tell me. And just by brainstorming, I said, those kids, they have a school? Yeah, oh yeah. You sure everybody has a school? Okay, we save time. And you start an ongoing process of giving support. You say, let's open a school. Then we open a school. And then you open a school, and you open another school. And we open now 7 schools. And it's interesting because if you get production from a country, you have to give something back. And what you can give back is not money necessarily, is facilities, ideas, energy. And regarding India, child labor exists, of course. In other country, I don't want to name it here. It's much worse, like it's been said by Mike before. But children in India, for the exporters, my partner is an exporter. He's a rich man because he exports T-shirts for Swiss people, German people. He charges more for a T-shirt. But the real problem, in my opinion, is local production for local people, where they pay a T-shirt maybe 40 rupees, which is not even 1 franc. And there you have the problem of child labor. Thank God. What we have been doing now with Dure, my partner, is, okay, it's an old company. Our employees are rather over 35, 40s than 20s. Interesting is if you are a CEO, it's a technical word for patron. When you're a small company, middle scale like I was when I started with nothing, you are there in front and you come with new ideas, you open a school, what can I do more, water supply and so, and you participate to bring something more than just placing a T-shirt SML XL. Intellectually, you're limited, I mean, you want to do something. So I think, and just why somebody does it, it's maybe personal, is that, as I said once to Peter last week, we should, all of you, myself too, remember our inner child, inner Kind, I don't know how you say for the German. That's the inner child. And we are not allowed nowadays. We have to be performing, charismatic, quick, right answers, show the figures to the bankers. Yes, our customer, I forgot your name, what's your name? Hey, you're allowed to be a child, have fun, and to cry, and to do mistakes, and apologize, and to be passionate, and you do mistake because it was wrong. Let's come back to the inner child. And when the adult world will meet the inner child, then never forget, somebody said, Saint-Exupéry, we do not inherit the planet, we're just borrowing it for the next generation. And that's the point maybe about the children, I would like to say.
Thank you for taking this to value. Certainly NGOs are organizations which you could call feminine organizations trying to take care of the weak. So it's all a matter of responsibility. Ellen, in Switzerland, Robin referred to problems we have as well, the suicide rate, which is not exactly a central issue. Which, how do you feel the feeling is in Switzerland, certainly after what happened after the tsunami? The feeling of responsibility for what's happened.
Well, Switzerland is known for engaging itself as soon as there's an accident somewhere in the world. The rate of giving money as fundraising money for accidents such as tsunami has always been very, very great in Switzerland. Solidarity outside it's okay, but within the country we indeed have a few problems. And one of them is that, for example, the example of the suicide rate of children in Switzerland is absolutely right. It's the same amount as car accidents. I don't say that in Switzerland we talk about the car accidents every day, but there's a lot done against car accidents. Just now there's all over the place in all villages they're cutting down speed limits to 30 kilometers, and they're trying to. There are about 5 or 6 streets in Switzerland with high streets or roads where you're speeding up and where there are notoriously accidents, and they're trying to rebuild these streets. But we've never heard of something trying to do in schools to prevent children from killing themselves. So yes, indeed, this is one of the problems in our society, that we don't openly talk about these things.
So could you say that in a certain sense that we in a rich, prosperous country look around, had beautiful mountains, etc., that the same kind of on a lower level of questioning is reaching our society as well? Do we have the answers?
No, we don't have the answers because we don't give it enough thought. There are many things. I mean, when I read Mike's book here, Kids as Our Kids Commodities, there's all the questions on child trafficking that can be raised are in here. And there are many answers to it too, what one could do. And I'm sure there is much more knowledge around than people who are willing to work with this knowledge. You see, I believe that humankind is made that way, that people always have to feel it themselves. They have to be hurt themselves. Let me give you the HIV example. In the beginning, when that started to become a topic in Switzerland, nobody in society ever spoke about it. If one did, like my husband and I, we were the first to start to help one of the institutions in Zurich, then people said, well, you have HIV maybe, or your children, or I don't know, you. But for us, this has no relevance. But the moment people learned that even due to a mistake in blood controlling at the hospital and the blood transfer, you can get HIV, people suddenly started to be concerned because they knew it could virtually, not only, far away, but it could also reach out to them. And I think this is one of the major points. One has to make people feel for others in good time.
So it's a matter of awareness and responsibility. To go further on the study you referred to, as most people in the audience probably know, Terre is on a rather broad campaign on the prevention on child trafficking, including programs in different countries, prevention, etc. Mike, you wrote a study on that. I remember when I was at the World Economic Forum a couple of years ago, explaining this phenomenon, which has always existed, but which is increasing because of globalization. Everybody said, that's not an issue for Davos. You know, I'm against. That's an issue for the Albanian mafia. Is that solely the Albanian mafia, Mike?
Well, if it's an issue for the Albanian mafia that export children to other parts of Europe, then presumably other nice Europeans are involved. Actually, in Albania, the Albanians are doing rather more about child trafficking than most of the European Union. I won't comment about the situation here in Switzerland. And no, all sorts of other people are involved. If there is a mafia trafficking a child, as there are teenagers into prostitution, then there is someone who is buying the services of that child. If there is, the case I referred to earlier, a child making a carpet for export, someone's buying the carpet. And sometimes for many of us as consumers, it's very difficult to know what to do, except for feel guilty and then sort of swallow it and go on buying things, because you actually don't know what on earth you're buying half the time. There are exceptions. There are exceptions when the issue of exploitation is much more obvious.
So again, notion of responsibility. Robin, you are a CEO. We have here in Davos the public eye on Davos who gave prizes for corporate misbehavior, and a textile manufacturer in American, Walmart, was awarded this prize yesterday. Back to your values. Last year on an open forum, a CEO, I think it was Mr. Brabeck of Nestlé, said he was specifically and legally forbidden for him to care about anything else than his shareholder value. That is a legal obligation. Would you share that that's the responsibility of a CEO?
Yes. No, I will explain. Walmart first. For those who don't know, it's, I don't know, $150 billion turnover, owned by a family. And maybe the problem with Walmart that the owners and the top-level guys, if they were in the front and they would see what's happening, they would take the right actions. They are separate from the reality. It's a big conglomerate. That's what I know. We're not going to be big, but never going to be so big. And even I'm happy to be a small company for that. I come to Brabeck. Brabeck is CEO for Nestlé, as you know, but there are many CEOs of other big groups who wouldn't even come here. So in that sense, we have to pay respect. They come in front and speak in front of people like you, like us. And to answer the question about Brabeck, I have an advantage. We're a small company. I can decide. I don't have any shareholders. I'm the only one, the only owner. So if I decide to allocate funds for this, take positions for that, I speak for myself. But Brabeck, in fact, if he's an employee of people, he's paid by people to run a company. Then he doesn't have the same freedom. In that sense, he's right.
Speak about people who are not here. About you, you have a responsibility.
Yeah.
What is the responsibility you feel you have in your supply chain, in the society, in the Indian society where you produce?
Then again, Peter, it's the inner child. I remember myself at the age of 8, I had a wish to go to university because my father said, there you learn everything. And I ended in university after a long way because I was private, like you. All private schools threw me out, all the schools. But I finished to have they sent me to boarding school in Germany. So it was. I was lucky, parents supported me. And after university graduation, I started the business. But I started the business not with a strategy of making T-shirts and building up, but just to do something. Why you do things in life? You don't know. And since that very day, I'm always free, and I have just one goal. Personally, I'm egoistic, I'm egocentric. I want to go to bed like a child. and I sleep quickly. I don't sleep a lot, maybe 5, 6 hours, sometimes 7. And I want to have no problems in my head. What did I do? A mistake? It could be a commercial mistake. Do I have enough stock to supply to the customer? Is the quality good of the stuff? Or what can I do with Dore in India? Now we are in China. We have taken action in China. It's a question of the inner child. I want to have good conscience. You can think it's demagogic. You can think it's, how you say, long-term marketing plans. You think what you will. Okay, I sleep well. I feel okay. Because, people say, come and, yeah, it's good what you do. And the kids over there. And the workers. We have 1,200 workers. 1,500 kids in the schools. They're happy. And whatever you do, if it's for your ego or whatever, the results should be there. And this is why the freedom of letting your emotion go. If you feel okay, like behaving, you know, people, they're buying garments by factories, and then they have a quotation. We take that guy, and you produce for me, and after, you are cheaper. I switch to Vietnam or Burma, which is a banned country. Don't forget, there is only one country. It's really banned. No hypocrisy in that case. And I drop you. How can you invest? How can you count to build up your business? Because it's called cherry picking. You switch, not switch, I mean, you change. And you drop, and you have no income. So if you stake for what you want to do, you stay behind, and you take position. People can criticize. You just have to accept. If not everybody will think that you are. People think I'm demagogic, but it's the truth. And this is the freedom of being a small CEO. It's a huge freedom.
Ellen?
Can I quickly legally clarify? As soon as a company has shareholders, it has only one aim, and that's its task. It has to earn as much money as possible in the interest of the company and the shareholders. In America, you can claim the difference if you don't get the full shareholder value, and this is also starting in Europe. So in principle, of course, Mr. Brabeck is absolutely right. That is his job. But there's a thinking mistake behind it, because making money quickly and making the best use out of shareholder value only instantly is a wrong strategy. And soon shareholders will claim that companies were only thinking of today and not of tomorrow. It will turn the other way around. If I may quickly give an example, just now there's a magazine at the kiosk called Manager Magazine. And for the first time, I've seen a ranking of companies who invest into long-term social responsible things. Now imagine, it's not only the DAX and the whatever, all these share, things are where you look up how much value are your shares. From now on, and that's what I always thought is going to happen, and today I see this magazine and it is happening. And that's really the most important thing I think of this evening. What we are saying is, if there are ideas outside in the world, you can't call them back again. It's a matter of time, but they keep on going. And that's why I'm not so pessimistic.
So we've got the inner child, we've got the strength of ideas and of conviction, and also the notion of personal responsibility. Kumi, would you agree with all what was said? How we spoke about Africa and the difficulty of having good policies given what's happening here. How, in heaven's name, can you put an inner child in government policy?
I think it's very important that we recognize that childhood today is a very different reality from childhood 20, 30 years ago, for children in the rich countries as well as children in the poor countries. I want to just say to Robin and Helen and to all of you, it makes me very sad to hear what you just said about the suicide rates. It is not unique, unfortunately, to Switzerland. It is a problem that we are seeing in many rich countries around the world, and it's what some child psychologists call the alienation of young people from society. Now, when we think about how young people can even have an impact on policies that affect their lives, it's really important that we recognize that adults are very famous of saying young people are the leaders of tomorrow. Or they say, young people are half empty, you know, because they still have to develop their skills and so on. You could say young people are half full, you know. There is a really important need right now to change the mindset of how we understand children, because there are many young people around the world today who are leaders today of youth organizations, of student organizations, there's an organization which I want to recommend that the young people in this audience visit, a website called Kids Can Free the Children. Mike referred to the case of the young boy in the carpet industry who was murdered, and that inspired a young Canadian boy, which led to a whole movement which now has members only under the age of 17, and there are 100,000 members all over the world. Okay, so the opportunity for young people to participate in society and have a sense of belonging in society is critically important. If young people grow up in extreme affluence and don't have a sense of purpose and participation in society, then you are going to have increasingly a deeper sense of alienation that will lead young people to desperation of thinking, what does my life mean? Do people remember that horrible situation in Columbine High School in the United States? 2 young teenagers taking guns, shooting their friends and fellow students, teachers, and so on. I mean, the adult society has to begin to take a responsibility of the kinds of policies that have an impact on children. And I want to argue that if adults cannot take that responsibility, as is the case at the moment, then young people need to organize and have the right to participate. Now, one of the things I want to say is that today, one of the things the organization I work for does is promote youth participation in society. And we have been advocating that there needs to be a healthy public debate, for example, on the voting age of right now. Today, I would say that there is probably a very good argument. I personally hold the view that the voting age should be from 16 upwards. And let me tell you why I say that. Today, if you look at how information access and all flows, you have young people who actually have as much or more access to information than their parents, particularly in working class communities. You know, where parents are working long hours and so on, quite often they rely on their children to actually provide them with information. I know from time to time there are young people in my life who actually inform me on a whole range of things which otherwise I wouldn't know. So, Peter, I think that when we think about policies that affect children, such as gun control, which is a big issue in the United States, right, which has a disproportionate effect on young children, they are vulnerable and so on. So we need to look at a range of policies that affect, and I think that we need to see young people as actors and as potential value that they can offer to society. One, because it will lead to better policies. 2, it will lead to more engagement and a sense of inclusion in society. And 3, I think that adults, own knowledge, own perspective of the world, there is nothing more powerful than seeing the world through the lens of a child. I can tell you I have one child, 12 years old, but when I was 19 years old, I was a live-in house father in a children's home where I looked after 10 boys for 2 years. I unfortunately had to leave that because police repeatedly raided the home and arrested some of the boys. But for the 2 years that I was there, looking at the world through their eyes and lens was the most developmental, powerful thing in my mind. Let me just conclude, though, on a light note. Of course, there's limitations of young people. We don't want to put too much burden on them. But if you look at the liberation struggle in South Africa as an example, South Africa today, I would argue, would not be free if it wasn't for the courage, the boldness, the energy, the innovation of young people. I myself became an activist when I was 14 years old. Now, of course, it has limitations because we don't understand theory, and I'll just conclude with giving you one example. In 1980, I was 15 years old. We were organizing a protest around the education system, which was unequal, where white kids were invested a lot of money and black kids were almost nothing. And, you know, we were organizing this demonstration. We had like tens of thousands of children all over the country that came out on certain days. And the limitations I will put to you in a funny way. For example, one of the slogans that we were shouting was, we want equality. And that's a slogan that the leaders at the march started at the front. By the time the slogan got to the back of the march, the slogan was, we want a color TV. So yes, there will be those limitations and there'll be learning curves and so on. But I think it is important that we recognize that young people should be consulted around policies that affect their life. And yeah, I want to commend UNICEF, Terre des Hommes. I see my friend Bukat Narek from Save the Children Alliance is somewhere in the audience, and a range of other organizations were saying that if you want better policies that affect children, just as you want better policies that affect women, or if you want better policies that affect a particular group in society, talk to them, listen to them, and incorporate their views in any policy making that you do at the national or the global level. Thank you.
Now, isn't it a delicious discussion? I mean, we're not talking about quick fixes, about technicalities, but spontaneously we talk about responsibility each of us can take. The level of consciousness each of us is willing to show, and the inner child we're willing to develop. Mike, responsibility. Consumers, in the end, have a responsibility. I saw an advertisement I think it was an English supermarket, to explain that their jeans were even that much more cheaper. Buy them. Perhaps somebody needs to pay for that in the end. What's the responsibility of a consumer?
Consumer is completely responsible and completely irresponsible. And one of the reasons that we're mostly irresponsible is because we don't have enough information to make informed choices. Having said that, I've also known marvelous consumers who thought they were making very good informed choices, and those choices had disastrous results for the very people who they thought they were trying to help by boycotting a particular product. But consumers find it very difficult to understand the reality of children and adults producing the goods that they consume, producing them on the other side of the world. So there is a key intermediary, in fact, a set of intermediaries. There is at least one company, and probably two or more, one exporting and the other importing. And so consumers often turn to those businesses and say, well, we don't want to feel that we are guilty. We don't want to feel that we're eating a child's blood because a child died making this product. So you, the company, take the responsibility, do something. And we've moved a long way. Companies, reputable ones, those involved in the global production system particularly, do adopt codes saying, well, they won't employ child labor and so on. They tend to end up doing what the market demands, what the media demands, rather than what children need. And so we're back a little bit to Kumi's point, that unless you've listened to the children concerned, you're not actually going to make the right choices. The best companies are going far beyond just obeying codes. They're actually opening schools, they're investing in the communities that are making them wealthy. But at the moment, there's very few indexes for measuring that sort of give back, that sort of real social benefit.
Now, for the audience, if you ever wondered what the difference is, the way NGOs operate in the field or governments, this is the kind of discussion we have in civil society, the kind of things we discuss when we develop a project. I would like to move to the audience. We've spoken about young people. There are many young people, both of age or of heart, or even both. Now, we've got there's one microphone there. I've got one mic, but it was strictly forbidden. The gentleman with the camera wanted me not to jump down and go into the audience, which is what I wanted to do. So if there are people from there, perhaps I can move up front. Are there any questions to the audience? I would like to start with a group of young people here. That is the Pädagogische Hochschule Aargau, who have prepared actually this session, and they're future teachers. And they said, but you know, we want to know more what is happening. So could I give the floor to one of you and perhaps give you my microphone, if you please give it back then.
We'd like to address 2 questions to Mr. Cornelius. Can you guarantee us that there is no child labor in the production chain of switchers? How do you check all the factories and suppliers?
And the second question is, why do companies that are fighting against child labor do not label their products precisely?
Thank you. May I say, kids? Before I answer, I would like to give you an optimistic point of view. Just 2 seconds. I do believe in, I'm positive like you, Aileen, because the new generation is much quicker than we are. And it's an important point, the consumers will become voters. You're going to choose. Those kids are going to choose what they want to buy. It will take another 5 or 10 years maybe. If I drink Ratsunzer, I know it's in the area. If you drink, I mean, my kids, they know if we drink San Pellegrino, we're in Lausanne, we know it's maybe 1 deciliter of oil, of benzene. So the kids will ask, I've got 3 kids, huh? They're going to ask, what is this company doing, supporting a university? The product, the brand will not be the point in the future. It will still grow like this. But next generation, it will be the global branding, what's beyond the brand. Consumers will be voters, and this is your responsibility, ours too. To answer you the 2 questions, for the question about child labor in supply chain is quite simple. I can tell you, it's very simple. We first buy in 1 unit, or 3 units, 1 partner. It's completely vertically integrated from the spinning, the weaving, the dyeing, the production is 1 group of companies with my partner. So we don't give to subcontractors. So for the first. Secondly, I'm in Terre every 6-7 weeks for the last 20 years. 200 times, 120 times. I came back 2 weeks back, and I go down there again. So when you are there, you see the people. We have a social compliance officer. We have a team. We have done a random check. We're asking each worker with a contract, where are you kids? In the school? Oh yeah, where? So we have audited all this for the last 10 years, a long time before CSR was something in the topic. That's 1 point. And regarding the kids. And the other point, you said why we do not market switcher. It's it's a bit strange question. You know why? It's not easy to answer because I'm just realizing for the last 6 months or 1 year, I don't want to communicate about what we do too much. I mean publicly, because I wouldn't like. I can take a page in Hebdo, Schweizer Illustriert. It's better. Your husband, 24,000 Swiss francs. You have a quadrichromie page, and I put Rentrée des classes, 19th of October, Frau Müller, blonde hair with nice little girl, 10 years. And next page, I buy it, Rentrée des classes, Tiropur, Switcher School. All the mother will say, Switcher is fantastic. If I do that, would you accept? No. If we put tags talking about what we do, no child labor, it's selling what we do. No. If we go further, each tag, just in Tiropur, we put 4 million, 5 million pieces sometime. 4 million tags, it's, 15 trees. Do we need tags? You have to go on a website, get the information. And if we market what we do, it goes against our principle we have with our CSR department, which we consider that what we do is normal. I agree that it's not normal, because benchmarking, if it was normal, I would not be sitting here. But if you think twice, if you have workers, they have a written contract. If they work more than 8 hours in the Code of Conduct in India, you're allowed to work 6 days a week. 8 hours makes 48, plus 2 extra hours, paid double on a non-regular base. We know that. But this is parameters we have fixed, we follow the law, we have a recycling. I tell you something, because I can say something I'm quite proud of. You have to know that to to dye 1 kg of cotton. With 1 kg, you make 4 T-shirts. You need 120 liters of water. We, switcher, need in Tirupur 700,000 to 800,000 liters per day. So now, I'll make it short. We have a new installation that costs 1 million Swiss francs, and we recycle 95% of the water, and we remove the salt. The mothers here, you're dyeing a T-shirt, you have to put salt. You know, everybody knows. We consume 4 tons salt per day. And there are hundreds of factories, and the water goes in the river. So now we have recuperate 99% of the salt. As I said to you before, if you have cherry picking, if I go and buy there, I go to Vietnam, Bangladesh, I come back, how can my partner invest 1 million if he cannot count on business? This could be a good information for you. But you maybe I'm going to put this on internet, a question. Do you think we should communicate what we do, or we should behave like we are and expect people to be enough adult to look for the information and to take the decision just to judge switcher? Or we could put a tag, this is why I'm for your question. This T-shirt is, we recycle 99% of the water and the salt. This is your answers. I cannot, I'm wondering, is my ego, saying, if you know how good we are, this is very bad. I have to communicate, this is my role. But communication and information, this is a nuance. Communication is marketing. Information in the shops, switcher shops, we're going to put a poster, black and white, not on the spot. For those who want to know, this is what we do. And you, if you want to read it, but if I put it in your magazines and you have to read it, I interfere, I manipulate. So it's a big debate.
You say all these things in Davos, and Davos is also a huge communication exercise, and we know we live in a world of communication. Corporate social responsibility, I was at a session somewhere where somebody said, yes, well, somebody also called it completely stupid rhetoric. So it's, if it's showing what you really do and not just the communication. Ellen, if it's true that we need to redefine normality, that child trafficking is not normal, that child labor is not normal, that ruining the environment is not normal, what does that mean for responsibility for all of us here in Switzerland?
Well, it means, of course it means full responsibility, but I can't agree very much with what you said before, Robin, because responsibility also is based on information. And I believe it is, if you want to have something like an index, like I referred to before, of shares of companies which are doing valuable things with a certain responsibility towards ecological or humanitarian or any other point, it doesn't matter, because it's all one world, then I think one should, this society should take notice of that, it should know, and it also should have other awareness. You're talking, in my eyes, the typically Swiss awareness is do good things but don't talk about it. That's not right. I don't think that is the right approach. I think you should, a society should be, should estimate people who do things like you do, and it should become a valuable thing that you are in society. You are somebody because you take this responsibility, and that also makes other people, makes followers out of what you do. And if you don't let people share the knowledge, I think you're on the wrong side. And how can you take responsibility? It's just not, in 20 years from today, maybe I will look up in internet to see whether I buy a share from Switcher, to see what do they do. But today it's the other way around. Today and you still look at shares, how much value do they bring, and you buy them that way. And if you are not aware, for example, through media, which I think media watch. We haven't spoken about that. Very important. If I didn't know that Nike does this or that, or Nestle has children's food instead of breastfeeding or so, then I wouldn't know, and I would go ahead and buy these shares. So could we, Robin, maybe put what you said before in a little bit milder way and say, for the next few years, you damn have the obligation to inform the public to what you do, to make other companies have to do the same, to perform the same way, and give the public a chance to grow into this awareness before you can then retire and say, I know for myself I'm a good guy.
We will allow Robin not to answer. You want to answer?
What Aileen said something is two things I hate. I see big ads. Companies have a lot of money. We do this, we do that, and CSR, la la la. And it's maybe 50,000. It's good for the press. I mean, you need ads. But when I see the biggest the ads are, the less the people are in the front. This I know, and this makes me, I don't like. But secondly, there is a risk with this, what Mike said before, there is more and more code of conduct. You don't know exactly what's a code of conduct. You have the ILO conventions, associations, so. And nowadays, there is a risk. Everybody says, excuse me, you have a code of conduct? Yeah, I have a code of conduct. What's in it? Has it been audited? We have NGOs, journalists, TV, radio, everybody's been in Tiropo, and we say, we don't pretend we do something. Yes, we pretend we do. We don't pretend it's right. And you judge. If you see something wrong, say, oh, thank you, we rectify. But you may be right, because if the generation comes now, in the marketing, like Mike said, with the press, because with money you can do communication, never forget that. We are spenders in publicity, it's peanuts. We do sponsoring, we do what you want. But publicity is almost, you never see a switch ad, almost never, you have never seen in 20 years. But if everybody can say, oh, we have a code of conduct, and you think it's enough, it's dangerous. So maybe I have to rectify this and to be precise. But it's a change of all my way of thinking, of doing my business 20 years. I need a couple of months. Yeah.
I would like to go back to the audience. I've got a question here up front.
Thank you. I have a question which is maybe not about marketing or producing T-shirts. And I think Mr. Naidu or Mr. Doddridge, they introduced some pretty important issues about child labor all over the planet. And I must say, I'm not an expert, but I have heard, for instance, in Latin America, they are a lot of children, they are actually stating, please do not take the labor away from us, because the labor gives us the chance to create schools and education. I have heard similar things, I believe, in Bangladesh, where they do all the footballs, so they can create a little bit money also to create schools, which must be better than putting them into very dangerous jobs or into child prostitution. So I'm pretty curious to a little bit hear about your opinion about the must-dos in the future. How should we act or react about these issues for the future? Where we want to be in the future with these issues? How could we make that they have more money?
Thank you. Kumi, do you wish to take this up?
I just want to say that this is a complex issue. You know, it's sort of a lose-lose type of situation, in the sense that childhood, even in this modern age, should be a time for nurturing, development, psychological growth, and all of that. Yes, it's true that in desperation, young people, sometimes with the guidance and support of their parents who are even more desperate, do concede to children going into bonded labor, child labor, and so on. Often there isn't parental consent. But just because that desperation is there and people are desperate, I don't think we should accept that that should be a norm that society should accept. So it also means that when there is a campaign to end child labor, this is my personal view, and if it becomes a reality, then due regard needs to be given to how that income can be replaced in other ways and so on. And without, so I'm not saying that you need to be insensitive to it, but I think it would be dangerous to legitimize the idea that children as young as 10 or 11 years old should be working, in some cases, for 18 to 20-hour days. So yes, it's true. It might be that children in desperation, they are bringing the money into the family. Sometimes that's the only income coming. So it's a very, very, very difficult situation. But I'm saying that you have to have a commitment to saying that childhood is a particular state of human development. It's going to have an impact on that human being for the rest of their lives. If they spend, don't forget that, going to what Robin said, for me, the important thing about child labor, and I was very happy that Robin quoted Mahatma Gandhi's quotation on ignorance and education. My background, most of my NGO work has been in literacy and adult education, and so I feel quite passionate about that. So I think that, you know, one of the big problems is to ask the question, if children go into labor, what are they missing out on in terms of normal development? And one of the things inevitably means that they are being deprived of education, which means that they are stuck on a route for the rest of their lives where they cannot compete effectively on the job market and so on.
And children are therefore a group of people with a special needs, and therefore it's so important to look specifically at their issue like we do tonight. For your information, together with other NGOs, Terre, hommes, Save the Children, other friends of ours, at Porto Alegre, children was not a specific issue. This year it is. The World Economic Forum on the inside, for the moment, does not have a children panel yet, and let's hope that that changes next year. Is there another question from the audience?
I would just like to follow up. If you say it has to be changed and the children should be free, but what do you do? Because your answer you just said this moment sounds to me like they talk in the forum. I'm sorry. You say the children have to be free, but what are you going to do if the child says to you, I need the money?
Doing, madame, two things, and he's right.
Him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there's this program called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And when you have a difficult question, you can call a friend. I'm calling Robin to answer that.
I forgot to say something. You're right, Hélène. We have code of conduct. You know what? I'm going to publish it. Thank you. Because of you, I mean. Give me a couple of weeks, it's going to be in the papers. In the code of conduct, you have to be very precise. In India, no kids, no child labor should be allowed to work before 14. Since 1990, I've placed the barrier at 16. We have nobody starting in our units before 16. And trust me, at the beginning, how to know if somebody is 14, 15, 16, they have no passport, they have no carte d'identité. You take the horoscope, it's damn complicated, and we go and check by the parents. Then, so we take a security of 2 years. And what we do from 16 to 20, we have something called YES program, Youngster Education Support. And if a code of conduct is mentioned, and you can read it, and you're right, we have to watch out. You write it down. I could publish our code of conduct, and it's mentioned very clearly 16. But what you have to know, I don't know what percentage of company in textile have a code of conduct. They're to publish it and take the risk to be audited and controlled by Clean Clothes Campaign, by Save the Children, what you want. So maybe the solution is it has to be written, published, and checked by anybody. Transparency is maybe the future. You agree with that?
The lady would like to ask.
I would like to come back on this. I think it's marvelous what you're doing. But you're doing it for how many? 6,000? 3,000? There's millions, we heard, which don't. And how do you do the million children, which say we need the money. They even haven't got any parents. We heard they have grandparents. How do you change that? I mean, a little thing is something, but how you do it bigger?
Kumi, can I? Yes, Kumi?
I help you out this time, okay? Okay. Yeah. I think that right now we should encourage models of excellence, you know, where people are experimenting with new ways and so on. And I have to confess, I did not know about Switcher. I've been thrilled to hear what little I've heard here today. Because what we need is the generation of large, several models of good practice, which then begin to develop a groundswell. So, but I appreciate your question because we have to also be careful when we're thinking about how we change the world and make it a better, safe, more just place, that we ask the question about good things, how many people does it reach? Okay? But I just want to answer the question that I dodged about when children... I think that, you know, while we say we need to listen to the voice of children, we need to give children more voice and so on, we also need to recognize that strong parenting environments are important where, you know, to provide guidance and so on, and where children are orphans in large numbers, like in Africa and so on, there is a need to provide alternative kind of child support networks to help guide the decisions. So just to put the argument to you in a different way, so yes, in Africa, there are a lot of child soldiers, 14, 15, and so on. Some of them will say, we want to be child soldiers because we have prestige, status, food, and so on. But would we accept that? No, we wouldn't. You know, we would try to convert the children, away from military activity and so on. So, but I do think, and yeah, if I can speak personally, I mentioned earlier I was a live-in house father. I was 19 years old that time. I had 12 boys. The oldest boy actually was 3 months older than me. But I had this problem. When kids at the 16, 17 said, we didn't want to go to school, we want to go work. And I know that it's a challenge sometimes to counsel children, to convince them about the importance of finishing education and so on. And I don't think we need to do it in a dictatorial, authoritarian way. I think that we need to create the basis of counseling skills. And let me just conclude. Civicus is a membership-based organization, and one of our organizations is called the Parents Forum, which is based in the United States. And in fact, one of the things the Parents Forum does is actually tries to teach parents to be better parents. Because right now, I think parenting is a complex issue. And to address the question of convincing children to move away from child labor or from military activity and so on, it does require greater skills and effort to be able to do that.
It's an important question. Shall we continue with the rest of the panel? Is that okay for you?
I think it's not persuading them. What do you give them? I mean, it's a question of money too, maybe. As hard as it sounds.
Mike?
I'll just add that with 180 million children in what I would call the worst forms of child labour, yet alone all the others, there isn't one solution. There isn't what we call a magic bullet to solve it. There are many different solutions, and all of them require money. We have had a great commitment in the late 1990s from governments, as well as from some companies, to invest to end child labour. There's a big problem with our Western governments, which is from one year to the next, they tend to change the taste of their ice lollies and of their budgets. And at the moment, we're pressing them very hard to work towards 2015 as a target for many different social and economic objectives. There's a real danger that they'll put it all into counter-terrorism. They've already done that, actually, and aren't hitting some of this year's goals. But this is where there is a link with things that have been announced yesterday by heads of governments. When Western governments are continuing to put money into programs bring child labour to an end, and are doing so over many years, it may sound boring, but that is useful. Whereas if they give money one year and next year nobody reminds them that it's still a sensitive issue, that's a problem.
Ellen, do you want to add something?
Well, yes, actually to the previous speakers I wanted to say the head is round so that our ideas can turn their direction after all. So if there is a financial report, it is the easiest thing to legally throughout the world, and there's my legal background always coming, to ask for a social report. It's the easiest thing. As of tomorrow, legislation can be changed in all the countries, and you want a social report for companies so that with the auditing and everything, so that people can rely. I was a little bit not at ease with this panel because we're trying to shift the big problems, the responsibility, in my eyes, that's how I understood it, to the consumer so much. And I think the consumer, you know, if you look at the consumer today the way he is, yes, he has a lot of information, but does he have information on companies? I mean, my two teenager daughters, they go and surf in the internet, any kind of information, but would they ever, how would they ever get the information that Switcher has a social acceptable way of trading? So I think really, no, I'm serious about that. I think it's also in the companies and also in the country's best interest to inform the public. So this is not something you can put onto the consumer side, but you have to help the consumer to make his decision.
I'm glad you bring that in, because one responsibility we haven't discussed on this panel is the responsibility of the state. Kumi, what about the responsibility of the state towards children?
I think governments should have a primary responsibility towards young people in their society. Of course, government should have a responsibility for all sections, but I think if you want to make tough choices, you have to make an investment and provide the kind of caring, safe environment for young people. Now, the economists can even make an argument, even hard-nosed economists can make this argument. In fact, I used to be very irritated by this argument myself when I was working in adult education, and people used to say, why are you bothered about adults? They've got fewer years more to live, but if you invest in young people, they have much more years to live, so you get more return on your investment. But seriously speaking, but even if you take that very mechanistic type of understanding, it is very important that government understands their responsibility to children in a holistic sense. There are far too many governments in the world that believe that their only responsibility in terms of children is to provide basic primary education and maybe some secondary education, and then you're on your own, God help you after that. And unless you have an understanding that education, providing recreation and sporting access, looking at ways in which, even the notion of service, I think that, you know, the problem of suicide, for example, if there was a much more encouraging, not only by civil society, but if government was able to provide opportunities. Here in Switzerland, let me give you a very practical suggestion. If the Swiss government said, we are wanting to promote in young people a spirit of service to humanity, service to community, the Swiss government has the means to put up a big national fund to provide internships, learnerships, and so on, scholarships for even children in Switzerland to go to another part of the world, spend 3 to 6 months, work in a community, get some experience, understand what service is, and bring it back into the... And providing the opportunities of people to be able to get that international exposure and also the ethic of public service is critically important. All of those things, I think, are part of the responsibility of the state. And of course, legalistically, all the things that Mike is talking about, many governments around the world are criminally negligent at the moment in terms of not imposing the basic... It's either they have laws that say 14 years, for example, is nobody under 14, but when the laws are broken, there is no compliance and implementation of the laws, or in some cases they just don't have the laws at all to protect the basic rights of children.
Why do these countries still touch support from all over the world? Why do emerging countries who do not comply with the basic needs of children still get support from the UN and other international World Bank and so? Why is that?
Can I give you my cynical answer to that? Because it serves the interests of the rich countries of the world. Because in some ways, if we look at who are benefiting most from some of the, if you look at Nike as an example in its bad old days, right? It served Nike well to collaborate and collude with Asian governments, to try to make the highest profit. And so governments in the north can, not only on this issue, on a whole range of issues. I mean, you take Saddam Hussein, when he was using chemicals provided by the United States and the UK to kill Iranians, nobody said anything about it. So the examples of that kind of double standards, there's quite a lot. But I do think that the work of organizations like UNICEF and the UN in terms of setting standards and holding governments to account. And can I take this opportunity to quickly talk about the campaign, because this is exactly... Today in Porto Alegre, at the World Social Forum, a broad coalition of trade unions, NGOs, and civil society organizations, non-profit organizations, faith-based institutions, and so on, came together in what is probably the largest global coalition that's ever been put together around any issue, calling itself the Global Call to Action Against Poverty. And part of what we want to do, Ellen, in this year is to mobilize ordinary citizens. Each and every one of you in this audience can be part of it, of holding your government to account to what they have put in law, as well as what, when they go to the United Nations, they sign all these declarations. By the time they get on the plane to come back home, they forgot what they've committed to. So this year, we are planning various actions during the course of the year, in July, in September, in December. The symbol for the campaign is a very simple symbol that all of you can easily do. I'm trying to get it out. It's a white band, and I'll tell you why. And the website for this campaign is whiteband.org, if you want to follow it up. Why white band is because anywhere in the world, even poor people, they can find a piece of white cloth to tie on the end to be part. You don't have to go buy it somewhere and so on. But really, your question goes to the heart right now of...
Why is there not, if you think of the slaves that were used in German industry, they come up today, rightly so, holding the companies responsible for that. The people who worked in concentration camp, they had to work for free or for next to no earnings for all these big companies. I refer to the Flick collection discussion, which many of you here might know. Why don't we give NGOs the right to put such claims, exactly such claims? Why don't we give, I don't know the words of the Verbandsbeschwerderecht, but why don't children, like people like you, at your age, if you had grown up, let's say, and had to do child slavery, why don't you all get together in the third world countries, take an advocate and go against these companies? Because only to make them pay, that will really help.
Mike, what do you think?
Oh, I'd love to see them pay, but they won't, because international relations, international law is a matter of power. I come from Britain. I think the man that was next door yesterday, my Prime Minister, is a war criminal because he declared war on Iraq illegally. Is there a court considering a case against him that's going to get beyond the first minute? No. And it's much the same when we come to crimes against children at the international level. There are NGOs bringing cases. I'm not sure they're terribly useful ones at the moment. There is one in the United States which has a law prohibiting the import of products made by forced child labor, and an NGO based in Washington has brought a case against the Bush administration for failing to implement that law and prevent cocoa being imported into the United States. I'm not persuaded that much, if any, cocoa is made by forced child labor, but they think they have the evidence. But elsewhere, we see huge numbers of people who have as much right as are victims of forced labor in Europe to bring cases for forced labor and worst abuses. And I talk again as someone from a country that used to have an empire that it conquered, usually by killing people, and then imposed forced labor. There isn't a case in the courts against us. So I would like to see a legal system that could work, but at the moment, it won't.
Last year, at the opening of the Public Eye, Mary Robinson said there were only 3 issues to be discussed at Davos. That was accountability, accountability, and accountability. This definitely goes there. It's 8 o'clock and we need to round up this issue. I would like to apologize for the people who had questions and for our friends here who had prepared several questions, but perhaps we can take the discussion up. Perhaps to close, a short statement from each of the members. There is this title of this panel, Must We Call a Revolution for Children? Can each of you say, given this discussion, is that the case? And if so, on which issue? Kumi, shall we start from the right this time?
Yeah, my answer to the question is yes. That in fact, by what I mean by that is, if we think we can address the issues that Mike in particular set out very eloquently at the beginning with the business as usual approach, then we will not even begin to address it unless we declare that this is an emergency, this requires urgency, and there needs to be political will that are mobilized. Now, I believe that most citizens around the world, on an optimistic note, are in fact way ahead of their governments, including in the rich countries. And the tsunami taught us that, where people were more generous than their governments in the way they contributed. So I think that mobilizing political will, informing people about how serious the situation is, and getting people to actually get involved is critical. Let me just close with this, particularly for the young people in the audience. My younger brother, during the struggle against apartheid, wrote me an email from prison. He had smuggled it out through a prison warden while I was in exile. And he said, you know, I've been in prison now for a year, and most of it in solitary confinement, and I've come to realize that the success of any struggle for improving the world, and in our case, you know, democracy we were fighting for, is not determined by the immense, huge sacrifices of a few prominent leaders, but is determined on the basis of the modest sacrifices that each and every one of us can make. So I'd say to you, to the young people in the audience, please, if there's one message you take away, do not accept that you do not have the power to make a difference and make a change, and believe that you can make the change and find ways to get actively involved.
Thank you, Kumi. Robin.
You can make the change, and I want to answer to Madame. Even if you clean up your door, in Tirupo, when we walk 4 o'clock in the morning, it's very early, with jet lag it's midnight for me. With my partner, we walk in Tirupo, little city, no concrete, dust. Everybody's cleaning. The lady in front of her little house made of wood. So if one example comes, we have 1,400 kids, we have to multiply this example. So you're right again, we have to communicate it to Elaine. I'm optimistic, Peter, for the revolution for one reason. We should be enough clever to use the tools classical marketing people are using. The dilemma of the prisoner, if one brand does advertisement, the other one do not do, one will not appear. It's not true. We don't do advertisement and we're still there, number one for the last 10 years. So we should use the same tools. You should vote. You brought those kids over here 4 hours from Brugge, 5 hours maybe. So you're going to decide. So I'm convinced that the responsibility should be taught by the parents to themselves first and to the kids. So what am I doing? I ask my kids, ask them, you don't want money? Of course you want money, but you want time. You want listening from your parents. You want simple things. And the people, the shareholders, I'm very positive for the revolution, because the shareholders, they don't want shareholder value. We call it careholder value. They want to invest and expect in 5 years they're still making some profit without a big loss. And for you are important because if you can link the reputation value of a brand with the behavior of the company, and you tell the shareholder value, if you don't accept, I invest in social projects, the reputation will go down, and your shares will go down, you lose money. What are they going to say? Please do something, keep the value of my shares. So let's use the capitalistic tools, classical, on a new way, including people. I'm positive.
Thank you, Robin.
Very positive.
Thank you. Ellen?
If my husband didn't always get so furious if I say my words, that's obviously the role also of women. They always they have a different approach, and at the end of the discussion, I was really happy to say there's nothing I can add. Put the pressure on the guy has always been a good model to change things. And both Kumi and Robin both have said things I would just like to agree with.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, I want a revolution in the way we do business, and I wanted to start with consumers, because as long as we always want a cheaper product and we reward the company that offers a yet cheaper product with yet cheaper labor costs, then we're contributing to child exploitation. So I want a change in consumer behavior, and with it, a change in company behavior from chasing the cheapest labor costs.
Thank you. I would like to thank the panel for this discussion, and for the audience for having really went into a subject which, as we said in the beginning, is not easy, is touched by many different issues which are covered by the different panels at this open forum and at the public eye. Thank you very much to the panel.